All right, good morning, agents. I'm Kevin Lauren. I'm the Director of Training and Marketing here at Alta Realty Group. And today we're going to talk about how we can reinvigorate our stale listings that have been on the market for far too long. So before we get into today's topic, I'm going to bring Bill Seitz on the line. And Bill, I know I do need to make you a panelist this time. So hold on, let me make you one. Hope you guys are doing well this morning. Sorry we had a little bit of a late start. For some reason, hold on, Bill. Let me get you here. All right, you've been promoted to panelist, Bill. But for some reason, Zoom had a little hiccup this morning, and I had to reset the meeting. So, all good though. We are here. Beautiful morning on a Wednesday. Bill, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Kevin. All right, we made it.
All right, perfecto.
Happy birthday to you, buddy.
Oh, thank you, my friend.
So everybody out there in the Alta community, Kevin had well, his 52nd birthday.
There
Uh,
you go.
I always like to give Kevin a hard time about it. Kevin's I think about 4 or 5 months older than me, so we've known each other for about 45 years. So it's always good to rib each other on age and birthdays. So Kevin will forever be older than me, and I will always let him know that.
I'm the elder.
But we've known each other for about 45 years, so that's pretty impressive.
Heck yeah. What a
Um,
great.
Yeah, well, welcome everybody. Happy Wednesday. Absolutely gorgeous day down here today in Southern California. I'm sure it isn't most of the state. I think it's supposed to be almost 80 here today, which is seems unfathomable in the middle of or the beginning of February. And I did see a future weather forecast that is saying that things are going to change next week. So enjoy this while we have it. It kind of felt like honestly, this has been the best weather of the whole year for us down here in Southern California, I think.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
cool nights, sunny during the day, and just perfect. So, we'll probably have another week or so of that, and I think we're gonna get back into some weather. So, winter's not done yet.
Hopefully not.
No. And then got a couple things to go through, Kevin. I want to welcome new agent Julio Caesar. Don Kearney hired him. He's out of Orange County. So, Julio, if you're on this morning, welcome to our group. We're really excited to have you. And thanks for joining Alta Realty Group. I also have a special person, Kevin, who you know very well. My mom might be on watching because I invited her just to see what the hell we do at
Oh,
Alta Realty
awesome.
Group. So,
Hello, Mariam.
yeah, hello to Mary Ellen. Mom, if you're on, good morning. Love you. And okay, so you can give us a full feedback on how we did, Mom. Anyways, broker Tuesday tip yesterday was all about interest rates. Last week, if you followed actually, we were having the conversation about finance. It was the Fed decision on whether or not to raise or lower interest rates. They remained neutral. They did not do anything to change the federal funds rate. So they did say that they will be analyzing things in the months to come on inflation and all those employment numbers. So they did not rule out multiple rate cuts later in the year. So we'll keep an eye on that. I don't know if you want to pull that chart up real quick, Kevin, because it is interesting. We haven't really had any like news that's been super, volatile to the market. But if you have the chart, we can take a look at that. I think you're frozen. Kevin, I think you're frozen or something's going on. Lots of happy birthday messages, Kevin. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but your screen is frozen and typical Zoom. You're coming back.
That was fun. My internet just went down. I'm like, All right, awesome.
That was amazing. You were like frozen like Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back.
Totally. I'm back. I'm not frozen anymore. But yes,
Okay.
here is the 10-year treasury bill.
Well, live trainings, things happen. Okay, so
Yeah,
we
it's
can look at the
always a
10-year
pleasure.
we can look at the 10-year treasury. As you can see, things have trickled up the last month or so. So we've kind of seen a continual little rise in rates. Um, Probably not to be expected. We've always said that what the Fed says and the Fed does not necessarily mean what interest rates do. So while we do keep an eye on it, we do watch for the major news cycles and economic information. It does not translate to lower rates always in the short term. However, I do. It is my feeling that things will stay relatively. Um, I don't think we're going to be creeping up too much higher. I think if anything, we'll probably see a dip here soon. So we'll keep an eye out for that. 1099s went out. I hope everybody got those. Those were password protected, of course, and those were with socials with dashes. Is that correct, Kevin?
Yep. Yeah, so make sure you have the dashes in there. That has tripped up many people over the years. So we always end up feeling a few phone calls about that. So yeah, include the dashes between the segments.
Perfect. And let's watch this. Let's do the funny Instagram. This one's
Yeah,
actually
I didn't get to see it yet. So
This
let's
one, before you start it, this one's
yeah.
funny. This one's all about like lending and pre-approvals. And like if you've been in this business for any amount of time and you've probably worked with different lenders, you've worked with different agents, and this is just a full spoof on a gal that wants to pre-approve her client basically in the street with her finance guy who's the best guy ever, and he's working out of his car and he's trying to produce a pre-approval letter. This is actually really funny. So throw this one up.
Perfect. All right, let's see if we can fire this up. I hope the sound is sharing. So let's try it out. No.
Neil!
Oh, there we go.
Neil! Neil! Hang on a second. We need a pre-approval letter for 1.6 million. This is the house.
All right, talk to me.
She's a teacher.
Private, what are we talking here?
Public.
Jesus! Okay, no, absolutely not, okay? She doesn't make enough money. You want some life advice? Move. Iowa, Oklahoma, one of the ones in the middle.
Don't be a dream crusher, Neil. Be creative. I told her you're the best.
You said I was the best? She said I was the best? All right, I am the best. Look, you're making 70,000 being a teacher, right? Let's throw a little 65,000 on there. Etsy. She's making jewelry on Etsy.
That's so cute.
All right, then we're gonna do 90,000 on top of that because you're SAT tutoring. That's how we do it.
Everyone's doing that.
If we're doing this, I need a list of all your living relatives, your kids' faces and IDs, and where they're going to school.
This is real estate, baby. It's called collateral. Let's get your pre-approval letter. Come on, let's go.
Okay, we're out of black ink, so I'm gonna use blue.
Great, use blue.
There you go, congratulations.
Thank you so much. You're the best.
Don't touch me.
Let's go write an offer. Come on. Every great real
That was a pretty good one, Bill.
Yeah, I can laugh at that one because sometimes uh dealing with finance, people just think that you can pre-approve anybody for any amount, which is definitely not the case. So
Yeah.
I prepared myself very well for this webinar, Kevin. I'm actually excited about this one. I've
Yeah.
already kind of did my own homework on this, and I'd like to see how it matches up to your presentation. So I'm not going to share my list of things that I feel are important in getting stagnant listings back into the escrow department, but let's see how we go.
All right, perfect. So this is occasionally I do come across some pretty cool stuff in Inman. And so this is one that I came across about 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, we really need to go over this because this market, for the last year or more, it's been, we've seen a lot of these listings that, they just sit there. And then so I get a lot of questions from agents, what do we do? How do we, reinvigorate these listings? Because it's frustrating. And so I thought this was a really good one. So I will go through this. So what this article is about is, starting the when you're going to do you're going to re-look at your listing, it's a really good idea to do a full relaunch and not just a tweak, not just, okay, we're going to, change the price, we're going to do whatever it is. It's a really good idea to do an entire full relaunch. Okay. So, when listing sits, agents, they'll make small adjustments and hope for different results, but doesn't always work. In fact, it usually does not work. First place to start is the MLS description. So it's a really good idea to change up the description completely. And I know a lot of us are using AI, which is great, but it's really important to take that MLS description, rewrite exactly what it says. So, not a really good idea to just let the AI do its own thing, but take the AI and then really look at it yourself and really reword it to exactly what you think that property says to a buyer. So really, really important to take a deep dive into that MLS description, because that is a lot of everybody reads the MLS description when they're looking at a home and they're really interested in a home. We all do it. So another good idea is to use buyer incentives to change the math, not the price. One of the biggest objectives buyers have today is uncertainty, especially around rates and monthly payments. So I know, Bill, you're probably going to get into this because it's such a huge issue. So this is where incentives can outperform price reductions when used correctly. So over the years, we've talked a lot about creative ways to look at the financing. And so that's why it's so key to have a partner like Clearview Mortgage to make sure that as an agent, you're versed in how you can present this property with a different buying option. Okay. So rate buy downs, talking about them a lot. For example, um, if you're not trained in this stuff and you're not talking to your uh, mortgage person, should be Clearview, then they can feel really abstract unless it's very clearly explained. So it's so important to have these conversations with your lending partner and make sure that you are able to articulate how this home can be financed in a more creative way. So, breaking down what incentives mean on a monthly savings and annual impact and long-term value makes it tangible. In many ways, the perceived benefit is way greater than the actual price. So, understanding how you can reposition this for your buyer really makes a lot of sense, and being able to articulate that to your buying agent, if obviously you're the seller in this case. So another great thing to look at is pass the 5 second and 5 minute test. So first impressions completely still matter. They always matter, but more than ever, they are important. So 5 second test was founded at the Harvard University, and it was something that some experts looked at and they distilled it down to, 5 seconds, 5 minute tests. The study found that people make durable decisions within seconds, and we all do it. And I think most of us are, like gnats when it comes to attention span. So making those decisions, that your person that's looking at your listing makes decisions in seconds, especially when they're surfing the web, they're going through different listings. So you have to make sure that your listing passes the 5 second and 5 minute test. So buyers absolutely form their opinions about a home within the first 5 seconds of driving up to the home, usually before they step inside, usually before they even get to the place, and they're looking at it by just looking at your listing. So improving the curb appeal is an unbelievable way to make sure that it passes that test. And so my own anecdote is I was trying to sell my home all last summer, and I didn't have landscaping in my front yard. So people would pull up, and I would see these people pull up and just drive away. The inside of the house was incredible, had the most amazing view, beautiful home. But for some people to see that kind of dirt lot in front of my house was an absolute deal killer. And it didn't pass the 5-second test. People drove up, looked at my place, and said, nope, not for me. So I went in, I was, doing things on a budget. So I went to the nursery, got some awesome plants, bought some DG, put the DG all over the dirt, made the front of the place look awesome. Within, I think I spent $600. And so that, and then literally, I think I had just done that, and we started getting offers within a couple of weeks after that. Within, I think, like a week, we got our first offer, which was a low ball. We had to, negotiate. But so doing that kind of thing, curb appeal really makes a huge difference. And so sometimes you have to explain that to your seller and let them know, hey, if somebody's pulling up and it doesn't pass the 5-second test, gonna have to do some fresh paint, right, on the front door, small details, maybe a little accent around the front door, around the eaves or something like that, can really make a huge, huge difference. So then the 5-minute test happens as soon as they walk in the door. So the lighting should be bright, welcoming. Every light in the place needs to be on. The entry, and we go over this stuff all the time, but it's just a good reminder. The entryway should feel, open, and everything should be inviting and welcoming. So clutter, your client's personal belongings all over the place has to go. And staging is absolutely key as well. So anything that's distracting to a buyer can really be a deal killer. And that's your listing will fail the 5-minute test if you're not doing those things. So another great way to kind of invigorate your listing is to give the property a name and a personality. So we've seen this a lot when you're looking at different listings online. A lot of times realtors will give the home a name, right? They'll give the home the village cottage or whatever it is. And that makes it more memorable. And so giving the listing the name kind of informally creates the identity for that property. So, another example would be Corner Lot Retreat, the Cul-de-sac Classic, Walk to School Home, the Golf Course Hideaway, right? And smart agents will give their listings this little name, and that makes it stand out in the buyer's mind. And it helps paint the picture of what that property actually is. So then you can take it another step further. You can give the house a voice. One of the most effective examples of this is to, involve the house and the story about the house. So make sure you're talking to your sellers. What does this house mean to you? What has it meant to you over the time that you've lived there? And memories that have happened. Every house has a story. So find out what the story is for that house and tell that story. And video is a great way to do this because video is, by and large, the most effective way to convey anything. So creating a video about the house, what that story is super simple way to convey the story of the house to your clients. So another great way to invigorate your stale listings is create one pagers, right? A one page sheet that removes any uncertainty that someone might have about the house. So confusion kills momentum every time. So you want to have a simple one page document that eliminates buyer hesitation and confusion by answering questions before they're even asked. So, a good example of this is outlining true ownership costs, utilities, HOA fees, upgrades, things that add value to the home that the buyer might not have just seen at a glance. And so, creating this one page sheet that's bullet pointed that shows the exact things that they need to know, the biggest highlights of the home, is a really good idea. So another great way to reinvigorate stale listings is turn a broker open house into an event. So we've all seen the traditional open houses. They still work, they're important, but events work better. So create, instead of just an open house, create an event around the open house. So, and just hoping that agents show up to your broker open house, you got to give them a reason to prioritize your listing over other listings that they might be showcasing. Lifestyle driven giveaways sponsored by local partners like lenders, inspectors, and even local businesses that can dramatically increase attendance. So have a like cater it, right? Have one of your local bistros or your local restaurants help you cater this event. It creates an event. It's not just an open house. So another way to reinvigorate these listings is to expand distribution, not discounts. So if a listing's not moving, well, number one thing that agents think of is, oh, we got to reduce the price, right? Not what you need to do in every case. So create a YouTube walkthrough if you haven't done it yet. Send a direct mail piece to the neighbors. Knock on doors. Make sure the neighbors, if you haven't done it yet, and you should have already, but if you haven't done it yet, make sure that you are pounding the pavement, inviting neighbors to a special local homeowner neighbor walkthrough, right? So those little things are really good ways to make sure that you are putting this property back out into the public, back into the eye of the neighborhood, right? So another huge one is when it's time, position the price improvement as a relaunch. So don't just, all right, I'm just going to change the the price of the MLS. Make this part of the relaunch. And so many, agents make this little mistake where they present this price reduction as a failure instead of a strategy. So a price improvement, right? A price improvement is better than a price reduction. So pair that with a full relaunch, new copy, new visuals, new distribution of the incentives that you're going to make sure that your buyers are aware of. That's the way that you're going to take this property that you've had that's been sitting and put it back out there with this new energy, this new vibe. And that's a really good way to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward. You're going to impress your sellers. You're going to show others in the area and neighbors how you redid this listing, and that is what is going to get you referrals and additional listings. So, Bill, what are your takeaways? And I know you've been in this situation many times. So, what do you have to say about today's presentation?
Well, I got a nice list here. I nailed staging. I nailed the buy downs, knowing the financing options. I nailed concessions. I nailed the curb appeal. I would also add, I did like the fact that you talked about lighting, making sure all the light bulbs, all the lighting in the house should be absolutely done pre on market. fixing items that need to be that are going to be noticeable during showings. Stuff that's obviously going to be, like it picked up on your showings. That stuff should be done pre-listing. Uh, Photography and video, making sure that you're not the iPhone video person. We talk about this a ton over the last few years. Don't be the agent that's going to skimp out on the $300 for the, 30, 40 amazing pictures that's going to showcase the home in its best light. That's a pet peeve of mine. I can't stand that. Especially when you're here at Alta Realty Group, when you're making 96, 97, 98% of the compensation. No reason to skip out on that one. Um, and a lot of this stuff can be avoided, right? This is a reactive list pretty much. Like this, we're reacting to the house not selling, but a lot of this stuff can be done proactively on the front end, right? So having this list, knowing these things, going through your checklist, communication on the front end with your seller is absolutely paramount. I had a nice chat with Alyssa Demir yesterday about her listings in Oceanside, and she has a couple difficult attorney sellers, and we're kind of having a nice powwow about how to you know navigate that. And sometimes you do have difficult sellers. It's not always easy to get them to move or to go in the direction that you think is best for selling the home. I really like the giving the home a name and a personality. Uh, when I was working with Kano Ku, Kevin, back at Prudential in my early days, the big one was,
In the Stone Age? Was
yeah.
that Stone Age?
This is when there was no this is when it was DOS and there was no pictures on the MLS. Uh, but the big one was entertainer's delight.
I
Kano
could
Ku.
see Kano Ku coming up with that kind of thing. He was an absolute character.
He would use that one constantly. Everything was just, summer barbecue, entertainer's delight, blah, 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 right? But you did bring up the video, and I think we talked about it last week. If I'll remind you, but let's bring up Mel Chappelle's video because you talked about the history and the story behind the house and the history of the neighborhood. And that goes into giving the home a personality and the neighborhood a personality, and it's a much warmer connection to the proposed the buyers, right?
Yeah.
And curb appeal was a huge one. You talked about it on your own sale. Kevin had you couldn't even put a price on the view that Kevin had looking down the coast, the central coast of California, but people missed out on even seeing that because there was, a curb appeal issue, and so nobody was going to go see the prop. They didn't even get a chance to see the $1 million view because they were already discouraged by the curb appeal. So, that is a huge one. Let's see what else. Oh, one other thing I love to do. This is to me is as important as anything. The first few showings, always call every agent back and ask them for their feedback. That is so important in doing that before you get 3, 4, 5 weeks down the road, because you're going to get typically truthful feedback. Is it priced right? Was there anything that stood out to you that didn't look good or whatever? Agents generally, if you ask sincerely, ask nicely, you're polite and you want their professional opinion, typically will give you a professional answer, and that will 100% help you get an intel on where you're at right out of the gates, because we know the first few weeks are where you're going to get the most traffic. So if there's something out of place in those first couple days, you have a chance to make a correction right away and tell your seller and try to fix it quickly, right? Because for me, a lot of this stuff that you've mentioned are fixes, and we can avoid a lot of the stuff on the front end, right? Like, prepare your seller to offer concessions. If you just, I follow the market pretty much daily. There's more inventory coming onto the market. The rates have not really moved. They've come down a little bit from last year, but they're still in that low six range. And people are now deciding to make moves regardless that rates haven't come down. People were hoping, right? Hoping wanting rates to be down in the fours and fives, and it just hasn't happened yet. And do most people think it is going to happen? Yeah, but nobody has that perfect crystal ball. So people are starting to make decisions, even with the rates now coming into the low sixes. So you need to be prepared to understand how payments and how creative financing and all that stuff plays into this whole picture. Um, and lastly, one other little trick that I like, and this is I sold my parents' house. They downsized, moved out to Palm Springs. My dad was retiring, um, and I knew there was a couple big agents in the neighborhood. And before I even put the home on the market, before it was even ready for sale, I called three or four of them. I said, introduced myself, said, "Hey, I got a listing coming up. Do you have any buyers for a property here on Monte Carlo Street?" And, I got a lot of great information from them. Some of them said, "Hey, I don't really have anyone right now." Some of them said, "Let me know, when I can come by and see it." And I had a couple of showings before I even got it into the MLS. So knowing who works in the neighborhood and contacting them and using them as an asset is a huge thing to get the property sold. So I don't know. Those are really my you know things. The relaunch makeover makes total sense, but I think you want to avoid that at all costs. You know what I mean? So if you're doing all these things on the front end, you're not the likelihood of you having to do a relaunch is pretty low. So, make sure that you're doing all these things effectively and you will sell the property. The last thing on my list was pricing the home effectively. And once again, that comes from educating yourself, educating your sellers, backing it up with real data, real stats, making sure they understand exactly where that is. And that's a huge one because if you start out of the gates $100,000 over where it's likely going to end up, you're just going to end up in this scenario. This is going to be your reality. So that one's a big one.
No, those are all really good points, Bill. And so I think my big takeaway from what your analysis was is do this stuff on the front side. Try to avoid, you know, having these things sit.
Yeah,
But you can always, if you do have the listings that have been sitting, it's just a good idea to go back and just go through the checklist again and just make sure you're hitting everything. We always miss something, right? So it's a good idea to just go back through and make sure that you're reinvigorating whatever you didn't do the best. And I think that's the huge takeaway today.
100%. This is just really, really good, sound real estate advice. And, I've noticed, since, I don't know, maybe last summer, there's been maybe more cancellations than normal with listings. And yeah, I don't know exactly. I don't, have time to go into every single scenario with every agent, ask them what happened. But, I do feel that some of this stuff probably was missed or the agent didn't have the right strategy and probably missed out on a sale when that could have been avoided altogether. So, you don't want to be the person sending me the cancellation of listing because, I'm signing it and then I'm removing the listing ID out of the MLS and there goes a potential payday for you. I know we all work very hard in this business and let's be as successful as possible by utilizing these tools and this list and maybe having a running list, right? You just take these things and make your own list, and go down
Yeah.
it. And it's very and you can share that with your seller. Like this is the successful pre-listing list that we're going to go through together, and this is how we're going to accomplish your goals. This is how, and you talked about this on the webinar. Success, not I'm the greatest, best realtor, but I am effective at getting you to your destination, and this is how we're going to do it.
Right. Be the lighthouse.
That's right. The lighthouse. I like that.
Oh yeah.
But next
Well,
week,
good stuff.
if we can next week, let's play Mel's video if we can get that on there. That is definitely worth showing everybody.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that tells. tells the story of the home like nobody's business. That was one of the best I've seen. And
Oh,
it
it's just
had a
what,
great story. You know, the home had this amazing story. It was really cool, right?
yeah. And so she sold that home and it needed work. And so I think she sold it to a contractor, investor. This person now has invested, a fair bit of money to make the home and into, a newer version of itself in the same great neighborhood of Sausalito, and she's getting that listing. So it's a great story. There's a great video behind it, and that's definitely worth sharing with some of y'all.
For sure. No, I'll make sure we make that happen next week. Well, Bill, thanks a lot for your insights into today's topic. I hope all of you had or got something out of this presentation and took a lot of notes. Good way to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward on all of your listings. Thank you guys very much for the birthday wishes. Tons of birthday wishes in the chat, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I hope you guys make this week a great week, a productive week, and we will see you guys all next Wednesday on the Wednesday webinar. Bye bye.
See you guys.